Hello and welcome to the first episode of the VFT podcast for 2023. Today we are here to talk about both the A-League women's matches and the A-League men's match for this week. We will start with the A-League women's match against Western United first. Who would like to start us off?
Well,
Holly, you were there. Bring it
No,
up.
no, I wasn't. I was waiting for you guys to talk. So for me, I went to the men's game, which we'll talk about, and we made sure we went to a pub that would put the women's game on so we could watch it. But you can only really half watch it. I was waiting. I have since watched the full match, but I was waiting to see if somebody else wanted to start. Jonathon, I think you've been keeping pretty close tabs on how they've been tracking stats-wise.
Yeah. I was looking at. I've been looking at the stats on the Keep Up website. The last, basically, I've gone through each game and looked at how we developed, and it looks like on the game against Western United, we went down 1-0, which was not great, but we managed to keep the absolute. Well, they're top rated with Sydney FC. Keep them to a 1-0 win. The possession was skewed in their favour, but defensively, the Knicks outplayed the Western United in everything. So aerial balls, winning the ball back, tackles, all of that defensive side. Our Knicks women were head and shoulders actually above Western United, which is a huge turnaround from a 4-1 loss before Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, the rise of Mackenzie Berry this year. I mean, she was good last year, but she's really good this year. I mean, she's on fire. And they have to be a good defensive team right now because they are under pressure. They're under pressure from the offense when they get the ball. If they try and play out from the back, they're under pressure. If we have some balls going in the boxes, they are under pressure, and they've been very good under pressure.
I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think Mackenzie is going to be one of those players that we don't keep much longer. I have a funny feeling she might be getting good enough to maybe go to an Australian team or Europe or maybe, somewhere like that soon. I don't know if she's interested in college even in the US.
Well, she's got her bachelor's degree, so I mean, she could potentially go to college for postgraduate, but having been a professional player, I don't think she could play in the NCAA because she's been an employee. So she's technically a professional athlete. Is that right, Denise?
Yeah, I mean, there's some changes around professional, like getting paid when you're in college. Like you can get paid by sponsors and some other different ways now that you couldn't have a couple years ago. But I doubt that would be the money she would reap. I think she's a pro. She will want to stay a pro. She will want to be at a good team. Listen, I hope the Phoenix can keep her. I mean, they built her up. A lot of these players, they weren't household names coming into last season, and now she's a name that floats around my household.
I think she's with Kate being absent, I think she's shone a little bit brighter because she was always, I think, this good, and she was always appreciated there. But I think, although Maurice has also done a wonderful job, a really wonderful job, but I think perhaps you noticed Mac a little bit more. But yeah, she was great last year, and I would hate to lose her, but she's someone that you do hope moves on. She was called up to the Fern squad for the last camp, but I don't know where she was called up for this one. I can't remember if she was. So she's someone who I would hope would be making her way into the team, seeing as she's in the squad. But she was good. I think so the player of the match that was chosen by a weird mishmash of because we weren't watching, a mishmash of you guys and a mishmash of the Wellington Phoenix Melbourne supporter group who went, and the Victory Vikings, because I asked them as well who they thought their player of the match was, and that was absolutely Bree. It's a bit of a worry when your player of the match is your keeper, but she was outstanding again. So that's her second player of the match for this season. I still don't like, and this isn't a Brie thing, I still don't like that we play out from the back. I don't think I know the idea of trying to build it, but it's just not been working. And even if we just did it sometimes and not always, but the fact that we almost always do it, teams know. They know that it's coming, and that's how they press. They know that they can press because that's what we're going to do. There's no, I don't know. I don't think it's working. But.
I felt like she kicked it a bit more the last match. But yeah, I mean, you put your defense under pressure when you have J-Mac coming at you, and you're playing from the back. That's a problem because she's fast and she's strong and she's attentive, and they all are. On the Western United, those forwards.
One of the interesting things looking at the passing stats on the keep up is that, like, before Christmas, like, you can see real thick lines at the back three, so the goalkeeper, Marissa and Mac, and like it was obvious, and that's when we were getting just pummeled and trying to play out from the back. But what happened in last week's game and again in this week is that though Marissa and Mac are actually coming further up the field. So rather than sitting closer towards our goal box, they're actually sitting further up, like kind of more halfway to just over halfway to the halfway line. So that if pressure's coming on, they're not sitting way back, like sitting ducks, or like you say, J-Mac to come charging through on them.
I think we didn't do a review pod for the Wanderers game, the game before, did we? Okay, so I was just wondering whether I had made this point before in terms of being predictable, was that so Kushla Rue now plays for the Wanderers. She played for the Phoenix last season, and there was a massive chance that Wanderers had in that match because Kushla knew exactly what was going to happen because she played. So I don't know whether it was playing at the back. I think it was that she knows that Brie takes a touch every time she receives the ball. Even when sometimes she could just hit it first time, she always takes it a touch. And Kushla knew that. And so Kushla just pressured her and they didn't score off of it. I don't think that was the goal. But that's the thing about being predictable. Couch coaching.
Just something else that I've noticed like recently, and this was something that I had a few people point out, is that in the earlier games last year, like our midfield and our forwards weren't really sure where they were in position to each other, and like everyone was kind of collapsing in. Whereas in these last two games, like Ava and Millie have actually been able to push up a lot more, and I think with Grace coming back, she's opened that up, and like. When you look at how the team's playing, they're actually more distributed across the whole pitch rather than a triangle at the back playing out and then kind of this big bunch of players kind of in that middle section. So that's been a huge improvement. Oh, one thing I was messaging with the Western Core today, the supporters group, and they had big raps on Millie Clegg. They were like, Millie. So in the match, Millie didn't get a whole lot of ball, but she was working her backside off, and the Western supporters were like, holy cow, she is a talent. She is going to be a big star.
Yeah,
Do you think that Lily will be a struggle to get back in the team now that Freeze is so good?
I don't think so. Brie has been good. That's definitely the case. But I don't want Brie to go, but Lily has that leadership that I think we need. But that would be the big difference. Really, that would be the big difference. So yeah, it would be sad because I don't want to lose Brie off the field, but I still feel like keeping Lily. She only started training again quite recently. So maybe she's back for the Perth match. I'm not sure, but then she's in the Ferns camp. So not too sure how much we'll see of her over the next couple of matches.
I'm sort of concerned that because the reason I say that is because I'm sort of concerned that if they take Brie out now, right, she would have had a taste of first team football, and then if she gets stuck on the bench again, she'll go, do I really need to be here? Can I go somewhere else?
Mm.
You
Mm.
know?
It's hard with keepers.
Because
Just
it's
go on,
not
Blake.
like when we spoke to her before and she didn't have a taste of it, right? But now she's had a taste of it. I'm concerned that her mindset might be, hey, I've proved that I'm good enough to be in the team now, sort of by default. If I can't stay, you know, like I said, can she stay? That's my concern now.
Just
Who
while
is-
we're
Yeah.
sorry, Blake. Just while we're talking about the goalkeepers, big shout out to the Wellington Phoenix goalkeeping coaches, because and while at the moment we're talking about the women's team, also the men's team, both goalkeepers on the weekend were fantastic. And seeing Brie, how she's developed, and even she said it a couple of weeks ago, like this, she's only played a handful of A-League games, and to see how far she's come from that first game to here is like, wow. And the coaches are doing such a great job.
100% agree. I mean, we've seen her blossom, we see her grow. She did very well last match. She's been our player of a match a couple times, I think, actually. And, she deserves it. She can puff her chest out and go, I did it. It was one of her goals to actually play this season when we interviewed her. We were like, she just wanted to get out there and prove herself, and she has. And listen, it's who knows what's going to happen from here. But we all three of the keepers, we're big fans of, and we want to see keep growing and keep getting out there. So cool. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the midfield and the forwards? I mean, I think
Yeah, I was just gonna,
is
just
incredible.
sorry.
Probably would just lob the ball to her all the time. What?
Yeah. Sorry, Holly, you mentioned like if or when Lily comes back, she'll bring that leadership dynamic. One thing I've noticed the last two games is that Chloe has been growing into that captaincy role. I mean, have you noticed that? What's your perspective been?
You're on mute, bud.
Jesus, how long into working from home in COVID are we? So she's, I think, long been a leader. She's a little bit older than a lot of them. She's got like a psychology degree, so I think she's often been a leader. But I think it was actually Mackenzie who had the captaincy on Saturday. But either way, I mean, she is a great leader as well.
Mm.
Yeah, she had a really good match, I thought. Some of the other matches, she was trying to find like her place, her role, or whatever. But this last match against Western United, she was switched on and she got it.
Mm. Do you share some of the same concerns as me, Denise, as like losing them? I know you said they're all great keepers. Just going back to Brie for a second. Do you have the same sentiments as me? That you're worried now that she's got a taste you might lose them?
Sure. I worry. They're all my babies. Like, like I feel like they're my kids or something. Like you want them to perform, you want them nearby, you want them to stay happy. But this is a sport and people need to develop and people need to grow, and it's hard, these attachments I have to these athletes because they're just good people. And you can feel these like, oh, I want them near me. I don't want them to go. I mean, it's natural. That's human. And I think that's an absolutely human feeling, Blake. And will she go somewhere else? It depends on what she has as an offer. You always just have to weigh up. I mean, she has a real presence here on this team now. And she will need to weigh that with any other place she needs to go.
But it's like Charlie with family in Australia. She's got family in Australia, so that's a big factor. It was the same with Charlie, So I'm worried.
Joe,
that
just to add to that, Blake, on Twitter on after the game, David Dome, who's the general manager for the Knicks, was talking up Bree like, yeah, she's at that level, you know, like, and so when the club manager is coming out going, hey, that was a good game, you know, you're starting to hit your stride.
I've noticed we talk about the goalkeepers a lot on this podcast. I feel like if you like worked out the positions that we talk about the most, we seem to keep talking about goalkeepers because they're just such an interesting position, and we have these interesting characters.
That because we got quality goalkeepers, that's why.
It would be
So-
exciting to see players go elsewhere. I mean, you know, especially if they go somewhere big, like Ben Wayne from the men's team. He's just left for England, got his first start for his new club, almost scored a goal, and like, it's a pity that he's gone. But you've got to be happy for him as a player. So I think it's the same thing. It does suck when they go to a rival team, but if they go to another league, that's fine.
Yes.
I'm not mad at it. I won't be booing you.
Yeah. Can we
Can
we talk about Mickey Robertson?
Yes. Oh my
She's
God.
she's the new signing of the season thus far, hands down.
Yeah.
I reckon the two Mickeys are side by side as far as like just having absolute breakout seasons. Like, where did these people come from?
Yeah. Go for it.
year, and she'll be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I trust her. She just has soccer IQ. You feel it on the pitch. You feel like she knows her positioning. She knows her role. She's running at it. You know, like I said, I would run my offense through her if I could. Like, she feels like our equivalent of Megan Rapinoe. Like, she gets it. She understands it. She understands the game. She either can score herself or she knows the pass to make. And she knows how to use her body too. Like, I remember one play, she was like, caught it right on the sideline. And, you know, like, that takes a lot of coordination as your body's going out, just to slow down the ball and then to look up and to know where you can see it. When we interviewed her, she's like, yeah, I played against the boys. And you're like, she played against the boys. She, you know, like she just has it.
How funny is it though that the shortest player on the team scored a header from the corner?
Love it. It doesn't matter, you know. Debina's, you know, like she's a little woman, and she scored, you know, game-winning goals. You know, it actually doesn't matter. Like, if you're J Mac and you're almost 6 foot, you're 6 foot, or if you're Mickey and you're, I don't know, 4'10". I actually don't know, 145 centimeters, whatever that is. She's small, and that still shot of her on the, like, I don't know, the microphone case doing
Yeah.
That's classic.
that was so good. But I'm so happy she's on the team. She's so good. I would when she sat out a match, I don't know why. Hopefully all that's recovered, but she is good, and run it through her because she gets it.
I think so. Sometimes players who are shorter, they kind of have to work harder to earn their place. And people sort of look at them and they're like, you're not very big. Like, you don't have to be huge to play football, obviously. But, you know, especially when you're going through those age groups and you're small, and you have to work just as hard. Like a parallel might be Josh Nisbet. He plays for the Central Coast Mariners men's. He's 5'4", I think. So, you know, shorter than me. And you can see him on the field. And with some of the tall players he plays with, he's tiny. But he gets out there and he just works and works and works and works. And I think maybe it's a stereotype, but I feel like when you are short, you do have to prove yourself, and you end up working really hard, and you know when to pick your battles. You know, you don't put the short person in the, you know, 6-yard box when you've got a corner. You put them at the top of the penalty box where they can get a rebound. You know, it's just basic stuff like that. But I think that might be part of it, just that having to work so hard because you're a shorter person.
just as we wind down the women before we move on to the men, is there anything else you want to touch on for the women's game? Anyone?
Just looking ahead, and Holly's already alluded to this. We've got, there are 6 Knicks players who have been called up to the wider Ferns squad to play the US in 2 weeks' time, and there's 2 games. So that's pretty cool. Like, that's big raps on what's working well at the Knicks. So I think, Coach Nat, we've had a bit of a tough start to the season, but I think the players, the talent's there, the diamond force is there, and Yitka can see it. And obviously, there are players that can't come back, but having 6 players being selected is pretty damn cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I hope we do a podcast on that, because I think they all need good mentions and how they're gonna gel together as a team.
All right. Are we happy? Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the men's game against Sydney FC at the new Allianz Stadium. Straight after this one, probably maybe the most controversial game of the season yet. Maybe. So what do we think of that?
So, yeah, it's probably the most controversial game, not of our season, but like the entire A-League season thus far, and quite possibly by the end of the season. So I went. We had a really good crowd at the in the away bay there. A lot of them didn't sort of know yellow. Like, there are a lot of people in Sydney and a lot of New Zealanders in Sydney that like football. So there was actually quite a good crowd there. And we got some chanting going and stuff like that. Like, we really, I think we did a pretty good job of supporting. So it was interesting because all the action kind of happened at the other end of the stadium. So we're down one end in that corner, and then there's the far end, which is where the Cove sits, which is the Sydney Active, and they were quite big and they were quite loud as well. And most of the action sort of happened in that half, if not all the way down the end. So Zawada's goal in the first half was down there. All the stuff about the penalties was down there. And so it's kind of funny because you're there, but you don't see what's happened that well because it's so far away. And so you're like, what's going on? And then we have to like look at the big screen up on the other side to wait to see what has happened. And this happens when you attend games anyway, normally, but with so much controversy. And of course, the Cove is yelling and screaming down there as well about what they as active fans think should be happening or how they're feeling about it. And we're all just, I'm not even sure how to describe, like, when we went 1-0 up, when we went down to 10, I think that Krayev was stupid to get that first yellow card. He did not need to make that stupid tackle. There was no need for it. And then he wouldn't have been sent off if he had a little bit more maturity to not make that frustrated tackle in the first half. And then I think the second was a bit harsh to be a yellow, but you've got to be more careful when you've already got a yellow card. So he was sent off. And at this point, it sort of feels manageable, right? Like, it's early 70s of the minutes. It feels manageable to defend with 10. It just means that you don't really have a striker. You park the bus mostly. And then Nicky Pennington gets sent off. And this again was very controversial because, so I think the send-off is probably because he put his hand and his hand went on Max Burgess's throat. I think that's what it is. He didn't squeeze. He kind of looked like he was trying to push him away because Burgess is holding him in, and he was trying to push him away. But because he put his hand on the player's throat, I think that's why that's been called that way. I think that's really harsh. If that is the standard for the rest of the season for a send-off, I will accept that. It has not been the standard in the past. There have been even next matches, the one with Wanderers where a player put their hands on Ollie Sale's throat, didn't get sent off. So there's inconsistency there. But there's a really sinking feeling when you're only 1-0 up and you go down to 9, because suddenly that becomes like, it looks like a mountain to climb. And we were just, every time there was like a save, or the ball was cleared or blocked, or we got it up the field, it was just like this absolute like elation that we'd survived another attack, another couple of seconds, and then right at the end they get this penalty, and there's just yelling through the whole stadium, because all the Sydney fans are yelling like, yes, that's a penalty, that's a handball, and every Phoenix fan is yelling, no, that's not a penalty, that's not a handball, and the players are all yelling and stuff like this, and there's just like this absolute chaos. And then like, so we're watching far down, and then you're expecting to see the net ripple, because it's a bit hard to see whether the ball's gone, but it's really easy to see the net ripple when the ball has made contact with it. And we're all standing just expecting that, because it's, I don't know if Andre's a very good player, very good at scoring penalties, and it didn't ripple. And there was like this sort of celebration, this like sound from the cove. They were like, like this, and you knew. And then you waited for the replay and saw this awesome save. And while the replay was playing, they decided that there had been a handball. So Ollie had saved, palmed it away. It had gone to, I can't remember who, and Callan Elliott went to try and block it. Side on, I'm giving you a narrative here, sorry, but it was just like the way that this happened, it was just crazy. So he has his arm, and I think it hits his arm. I mean, his body is there. If it didn't hit his arm, it would have hit his face anyway. So I'm not sure that, like, at least it did hit his hand, but you've seen those not given as well. And then the fact that we were just, like, everybody, the commentators, the Phoenix, everybody just incredulous that there was the second penalty right away. And then he skied it. And then like a couple of seconds later, it was the final whistle. And we were just like, I had absolutely lost my voice. We were just screaming and jumping with joy. It is probably the most emotional thing, like, football match I've ever been to. Those last 10, 15 minutes, straight send off, those penalties, the sound in them, because it's a wonderful stadium to go to, and the sound in there is also, it's kept in. It's a new stadium, the acoustics are really good. So the way that the match felt in terms of the sound and the amount of fans, it was amazing. It was amazing. I can't believe that we held on. It's absolutely incredible. It's maybe one of the best defensive performances that the club has ever done. I will never forget that match. It was crazy. Anyway, there's my we've gone to school and I've told you what I did on the weekend. Perhaps we could discuss the match in more detail, or I don't know whether you want to talk about those incidents, but it was wild. Absolutely.
So what stood out? Yeah, what stood out for me, even in amongst that, Holly, and you've mentioned, is like when we got down to 9 players, like Tim Payne and Ugarkovic and Scott Wooten, all of those guys stood up, and like Callan Elliott come on, and besides the accidental handball, he almost got a second goal. He was down the other end of the field and he missed. If that had gone in, wouldn't it? But the boys absolutely stood up. And when Ollie Sales saved the goal, and he was absolutely giving it to the refs. He was giving him what for. And on the sideline, and I don't know if you saw the game later, Holly, but Uffy was absolutely giving it to Steve Corica. And these guys were going there like, they're swearing and cursing and all sorts. It was bloody great to watch.
They used to be teammates, Corica and Uffy. So, and they shook hands and made friends afterwards by the looks of it. But yeah, Uffy does yell a lot. I'm personally not. So this is another one of the discussion points that comes with this, is the quality of the reffing. And I personally try not to criticize refs too much. They're people, they make mistakes. And also abusing a ref, even if they make a mistake, is not okay. And Ollie, if he said what it looked like he said, which was fuck off, Sean, he probably should have been sent off for that. You can't do that. You can't do that. And I see a lot of like the players and the coaches and people, the way they speak to refs, and that filters down to the grassroots level, and that's why we don't have enough people becoming refs. So I'm usually reluctant to criticize the refs. I don't think they're corrupt. I think that the corruption thing is absurd, but they were poor decisions, and he's made really, really poor decisions in the past. So I hope that there's some kind of review. I don't know how you guys felt, whether you buy into it's a big Sydney conspiracy.
Well, yeah.
Just before we go into the conspiracies, I'm pretty sure Ollie invited Sean to his birthday. He's like, come to my birthday, Sean.
I think that must have been what it is.
Yeah.
I hope so.
For me, I respect what you say in terms of it's not nice to say what he said to the referee, but if you got to look at it like and the way of the player too. If the refereeing performance wasn't so poor, he wouldn't have to do to those standards.
Yeah, and just before that penalty, he had given Ollie a yellow card for time wasting, because Ollie kind of bent down to do this like hip flexor stretch, like, oh, I've got cramp, and then the ref's like, right, yeah, yellow card. And then it's funny because two of the Phoenix guys went down at the exact same moment, like, pow, like Tim Payne and someone else, and they both suddenly got cramp, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, it's okay, we feel better now, we're okay, there's no cramp, and they get up and they carry on playing. So there was some fun and games going on from both teams.
But you sort of get what I'm saying, right? Because the referees bring their, and I feel personally that they bring the abuse on themselves with whatever team it is because of the inconsistent and sometimes poor refereeing performances.
I think, like, I understand it's heat of the moment, and I understand, like, more than 10,000 people in that stadium. I think it was like 13,000. Like, there are a lot of people. It's loud, and I know that people get worked out, but like, it's not acceptable. Some people think it's acceptable, but it is generally not acceptable to scream at the restaurant waiter or waitress who brings you the wrong meal. Some people do that, but it's not acceptable to do that because they've made a mistake. Anyone can make a mistake. Players make mistakes all the time. They make mistakes. I make mistakes in my life. And this idea that people have the right to be abusive towards referees is sort of ingrained, and it's really a football thing. You don't see that in other sports. You do not see that in other sports, that kind of behaviour. So I do get where you're coming from, Blake, but it's a culture that needs to go.
And to add to that, like Sean did go at what there was the VAR or someone who was giving him instructions as well. It's just that he happened to be the guy in the middle with the whistle, so he was the one copping all the heat. But when I watched the replay later, like there were a couple of times, and his earpiece was giving him instructions.
Exactly. So it's a team. Refs are a team as well. Like the centre ref relies on their assistant refs. And if the assistant ref makes a mistake, and the centre ref winds up getting in trouble there too as well. So I just think it needs to be stamped out. But yeah, I do understand in that moment. I may have said something myself along those lines. I can't be heard. I know I can't be heard, but it was.
Yeah, and there has to be an understanding too that after so many years of unfortunate calls against a New Zealand team and an Australian soccer league, there's got to be a breaking point too. And I think the fans are starting, and me to a point included, are starting to get tired of the not so much conspiracy, but poor quality of refereeing that seems to be in our games. And that
Just to add to that, Blake, there was one bit where like Sydney got the goal, they got the ball in the net, and like they thought, yep, we've scored, and then VAR had a look, and literally it was like the hairs on the Sydney player's leg that was offside. And I was sitting there thinking, now, if that was a Phoenix player, he'd be off. He would be like, we would have it waved that way as well. So I was okay just because it actually that was a fair call. You know, like when they did the VAR line, literally it was the hairs on the player's knee that had him offside. And I was like, what would happen if that was a Phoenix? I'm like, they'd call that offside. And Sydney's goal was taken away from them. And I was like, okay, that's all right. You know, we can roll with that. So that you know, I think both sides had something to be aggrieved about when it came. You know, there wasn't all one-way traffic. Phoenix didn't get all the bad calls.
I think, yeah, I don't like the anti-Kiwi conspiracy that I see as well, because the thing is, like, it's very easy to be one-eyed when it's your team that's playing. But if you actually go and you watch other matches, you see that don't involve the team that you are personally emotionally invested in. You see bad decisions all the time. And like I had said, refs make mistakes. There's a limit to how many mistakes they should make. There was a really bad one that Sean Evans did where he VAR reviewed like a player stomping on another player's ankle and then didn't give it for some reason. And that didn't include the Phoenix, and people were angry about that. So there's bad reffing decisions all over the place. They're human beings. They're human beings. I think, to continue my rant about referees, I think maybe with VAR, they need to have the audio broadcast, at least on the broadcast, even if it's not on the stadium, even if it's just broadcast on TV, so that people can actually hear what the decision-making process is. Because a lot of times rules are, people think they know the rules and they don't. That's another problem, is you get a lot of armchair referees who think they know what the rules are, but they don't. They don't know what the rules are. So
it's a startling difference. Someone who has never seen, say, rugby before, and that thought process that occurs there. I was like, wow, this happens in the world. And, you know, you can witness this thought process. And I think it's fantastic. And the more they can bring that into football, I think the better.
I think, yeah, the NFL does it too. There are quite a few sports, I think. I mean, I guess they need permission, like from the referees, union and stuff like that. But I don't see why not. And it can only help them that people actually understand what the process is.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen that second yellow card that ended up becoming a red having been looked at, because the referee, Sean Evans, was behind the play, and like our Phoenix guy went in and he didn't actually touch the Sydney FC guy. Like he kind of touched him from behind on that side of the ankle, or like on the side of the foot, but it wasn't like a full-on we'd go, yep, that's a yellow. Like that particular one was a judgment call, and in that kind of situation, having a neutral observer go, yep, that's a yellow, well, no, maybe not, maybe that's more a free kick. I think that would have been helpful.
But this is the thing, is VAR can't review yellow cards. It's not that tackle was not a red card tackle. It was a yellow card tackle, but it was a second yellow card. So if it had been a red card, potentially a red card tackle that wasn't given a red card, or a red card tackle that was given a red card but shouldn't have been given a red card, that's when VAR can get involved. But even though he got sent off, it wasn't a red card tackle. It was a yellow card tackle. VAR can't intervene.
One thing I'd like to see trial with the VAR, and I was thinking about this on the Christmas break, during the Christmas break that we had off, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it. Like, how would it be if, like, for example, the A-League traded like a referee from the Premier League or something in the UK for the men, for example, to come and be a VAR for a season over here. So, like an independent referee that's not biased to the league or certain for games. Like they're hired for half a year or whatever, and they're independent to the rest of the referees.
So there are panels I know for a fact, because I do know someone who is an A-League women's match official, and after every match day, every week they will have like a Zoom call, and the big discussions will be had. The big calls will be discussed, clarifications will be given about this rule or that rule or whatever needs to be discussed. There is a review process. It's just that it seems so opaque. I think that's the problem. And there are, like, FIFA does accredit people as well. Like, you can't just be some random referee and then go referee a World Cup. Like, they have to be accredited. And the other thing is that someone who comes from a different association or a different competition needs to learn the rules that are adhered to in that competition, which could be things like what counts as a standard for a handball.
So my thought process no good.
No, I see where you're coming from. I think there's this sense that, like, there needs to be answers, there needs to be reviews, there needs to be discipline, but there needs to be action taken if people are making repeated big mistakes. But I just feel like I think that process is actually technically there. It's just not very transparent. I don't know what you guys think. I could be wrong.
No, I agree. Just coming back to the game, our friend Jeff, he rated Ollie, I think he gave him 9 out of 10 or maybe 9.5 out of 10 for his performance. And I'm like, man, that was a 10 out of 10 performance. That was Ollie Sale had it was almost like the perfect game. Just putting it out there.
Because people have been saying that Ollie Sale wasn't as good as he was last year. There's been a lot of chatter whether he's up to the standard that he was the previous year. And a lot of people have said, no, he's not as good, he's gone down a standard. But I always think he hasn't gotten worse, he's gotten better, but there's a lot of people that disagree with that notion. So where do you sit with that, Jonathon, and maybe Holly as well?
Well, Ollie has said himself, and like he was in the press conference, and he said to them, look, that he recognises that he hasn't been putting himself out there as much as he wants to, and so now he's like, right, I'm going to start owning this game, so he's putting himself back into that place again. And I think maybe with like when we had Taylor in that back four, Taylor was an absolute beast, like he was a complete machine, and so Ollie was feeding off that energy, whereas Scott Wooten and these other guys that are playing in front of Ollie don't quite have that same energy. So Ollie's got to find that for himself, but I think he's got it. Here's an interesting little tidbit. A friend of mine who was at that game flew home on the plane, and he actually sat next to Ollie on the plane on the ride home, and he was asking Ollie, like, hey, what giving me some thoughts on the game and stuff, and Ollie's like, well, I can't really say too much, but he had a few choice things to say. But I think he has not declined or gone backwards. I think he's just doing it different, and he's got to, and like he said it, he's going to find that energy. He's got to bring that inner, just like, this is my goal and nothing is getting past me, and really let that beast out again. That's my little tidbit.
And before we wind down, it's just disappointing because there was talk of him going to Europe at the end of last season, and that's why I said the quality dropped, because it seems that he's gone down like a lead balloon. He's still good, but not as good.
I think so. I love how we're talking about goalkeepers again. Are any of them goalkeepers? Like,
I was going to bring that up, but
I've never played goalkeeper. Jonathon, have you guys ever been involved in goalkeeping? No,
I have.
Maybe it's your influence. It's your influence that we keep talking about goal. Oh, either way, I have digressed. I think the thing that you always have to keep in mind with the performance of the goalkeeper is that there are 10 other people on the field that they rely on to do their job. And so when the outfield formation has changed, or the people that you've got in your back line, especially your centre backs or your defensive centre mid, if they chop and change or they work differently, and there have been quite a few changes especially in those centre-back positions. I feel like there have been a lot of changes. And Clayton Lewis in defence has been pretty regular there, but then you've got Rufer coming back. So for me, I never blame the goalkeeper. When something goes in, when I play, the keeper's like, oh, I'm sorry, I let it out. I don't care. There were 10 other people who should have stopped that attack from happening. You're the last stop. We're to blame that you even had to save a shot or try to save a shot. So it could be something like that.
I think a lot of
So Holly, sorry, Blake. Holly's had her rant. I'm going to start on mine. So twice this week, I have had males, try and tell me on social media that Bree Edwards is the worst goalkeeper in the league. The first person I turned around to, I said, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. And then I'm just like, get out of here. You are an idiot. And then last night I commented on the All Whites page because they had a photo of Ollie Sale saying, what a fantastic performance. And I'm like, oh my God, both of the Wellington Phoenix goalkeepers are doing amazing. The Wellington goalkeeping coaches need to step up and take some praise. And I had another dude, two dudes try and tell me that what they thought about how Bree was not a good goalkeeper, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, you need to shut up, seriously. Okay, and like you said, Holly, there's a whole lot of other players in front of the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper is the last line of defence. And both Ollie and Bree are amazing. But what got me, and here's my rant, the misogyny was just out the gate. And that's why I put on Instagram, I found there's a spray can, it's got no misogyny. I'm like, get out of here, you clowns. Get out of here. You sitting there rubbishing our kick. Yeah, okay, this is not a goalkeeper's podcast, but for tonight, we're all about the, and I was just like, nah, just don't, because that's my rant. I just had to get that out, because I was getting wild, how dare you?
So I'm sorry you experienced that, Jonathan, and that is being a fan of women's football. And as far back as Holly and I can remember, this is what happens when you are a fan of women's football. And it's a secondary battle that men don't quite understand, because men maybe don't know the players and they're just reading it casually and they're like, oh, whatever. But when you know these athletes and men are randomly attacking them and they don't know their stuff, it is horrible. Can you imagine reading that as an athlete, as one of these players? Players read this stuff, whether they want to or not. A lot of them do. Some of them are great and can keep away from it, but a lot of them do. And that's why fans of women football get easily triggered by this, because their bucket is full. It's hundreds and thousands, and I've probably read 10,000 comments like that, and you just it pisses you off, and I'm glad it pisses you off. And go fight for us. But sometimes it's just freaking exhausting too.
There's a lot of people who they make comments, and from the comment you see that they don't actually follow the team that closely. There was one comment that because Ava always wears zinc for sunscreen, and she had pink stuff on, and someone had tweeted or something, why has she got that pink stuff on her face? And someone was like, oh, she's sunburned. I'm just thinking, if you watch Ava, every match, she has zinc all over her face, and it's super obvious. And it's just it's okay to not know things about things, but I sort of wonder about people who don't actually really watch or follow the team making these big announcements about how the team is playing, or whether someone's good or they're crap or whatever.
That's what got me. When someone comes out and says, oh, Bree Edwards is the worst goalkeeper in the whole league, I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here. And I'm on the keyboard how dare you? She's our girl.
I guarantee they do not watch every match. I guarantee that they do not watch every goalkeeper. I mean, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. We all think we know more than we do. I'm sure we say heaps of ignorant stuff as well, but it's bad when it becomes quite targeted towards a player.
It's bad when it's mean-spirited too. And, things like that, absolutes like that are mean-spirited. And they're just doing it to provoke you. And It sometimes provokes me and sometimes I blow it off. But it's a choice that every fan of the women's game has to make, is how are you going to respond to these things? Because it will happen, and it will happen to people that you really love and respect as athletes. And
Okay, just putting my hand up for a second. I admit that I was a bit mean towards Western United and all of the USA players. I'll admit that.
There's having a bit of this banter. Banter's okay. Having a bit of banter's okay, but there's a limit.
When it was 4-1, Western United, like, that was hard to take. But when it was only 1-0, we're like, yeah, you can have all your US players. It's all right. Yeah.
Many in the league have two. It's just we don't happen to have any.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave that rivalry with Western United. I'm just going to park that and just leaving that behind now.
Oh no, keep it. I love it. But again, banter is fine. Nastiness, absolutes, they wear you down. It's what people, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but it's what people mean by microaggressions, and it just being exhausting to see, especially if you're on the receiving end. So
that's what got, like, the photo was of Ollie Sale. And I'm like, hey, but what about both goalkeepers? Well, the bloody woman keeper is like, dude, just don't go there. Like, there's no need to do anything like that. That misogyny is just don't. Just go away. Go away.
I think, and just to finish, I think the reason why we talk about goalkeepers on this part a lot is because they're a very integral part of the team. They as Jonathon says, they're the last line, so that's why they deserve to be talked about, because I don't know if they get talked about on other places enough. And, and it's good that we highlight them, I think.
I have a dream. My dream is we talk about the forwards that are scoring.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes, please. Can we do that? Yes, please. Okay, on that, is it Taryn Head though? Like, so this is the game of the weekend. So I picked Sydney to win 5-0. I was like, Sydney are going to rob Newcastle. This is going to be one-way traffic. Newcastle managed to get 2, and it ended up being 4-2. And like, Taryn's like, anything can happen in the league. I was like, can you please help make Phoenix win happen in the league? She was like, well, having seen this game, you guys are going to beat Sydney 4-0. So I'll take that. 4-0, yes, please.
Yes, please.
And then Western Wanderers, Sydney Wanderers, they got their, they won 2-0. Like, anything can happen. And hopefully we have a rain of goals come down, Denise, and we can start talking about Ava and Millie and Rolo and Mickey and just all those goals that we're going to get between now and the end of the season.
Anything else before you go? Anything else at all?
It's raining goals.
Bring it home, Blake.
That's it. No, but anything else at all?
I just like to do a shout out to both. Just final thing for me is acknowledging both of the coaches. Like Coach Nat, they had a tough start to the season. She's pulled it right. She's figured out what the right levers are to pull for the team. It's starting to work. And Uffy, like, just the consummate professional. And just watching his energy and emotion, I love it. Like, I'm just like, go Uffy. Yeah. So I think the club as a whole is in a really, now, like, the whole club is in a really good space. Much healthier and much more excited than I was just before Christmas.
Yeah. And the men have got Brisbane, and I think the women have got Perth. Is that correct? Yeah, so we'll see you guys for those reviews next week. And hopefully, before or after this comes out, we'll have an interview for you as well. So we'll see you on the next one. Like and subscribe to this video, and we'll see you next time.
it's raining goals, raining goals.